Thank you for joining me, but before we get started, let me just say that last week's revelations were just astounding. Once again, Father Jay went into trance and experienced one of his past lives while visiting the Prado Museum in Madrid, Spain. And what about his direct contact with the spirit guides at long last? And just when you think things are going to calm down, he has another out-of-body experience that takes him to the sixth dimension and the Hall of Initiation, where he becomes a member of the White Brotherhood before forming a study group based on Edgar Cayce's work. If you missed all of that, go back and listen to chapters 27 and 28. And now, on to the next adventure. Chapter 29. Communication through Dreams and Rescue Work. Among those gems of wisdom that came out of the Cayce readings was the importance of dreams. He once said that there were two ways to communicate directly with God, through meditation and through dreams. Since I had received excellent guidance through meditation, I decided it was time to explore guidance through dreams as well. I asked my guides to help me remember my dreams and to interpret them for me if I had difficulty understanding them. They agreed. Again, I was very serious. I wanted to know if God was still communicating through dreams as he did in the scriptures. In the Old Testament, we find that Daniel was referred to as the man who could interpret dreams and solve problems through dreams. Joseph, one of the sons of Jacob, was sold by his brothers to an Egyptian. Joseph gradually worked his way up to become the Pharaoh's right-hand man by interpreting dreams. In the original Christmas story, Joseph was told to take Mary as his wife in a dream by an angel. Then later he was told in a dream to leave Nazareth and head for Egypt. The angel informed him that Herod wanted to kill the child Jesus. In another dream, they were told when it was safe to return to their homeland. There are many more references to dreams as the dimension of communication directly with God or with one of his messengers. The word angel means messenger. Besides still being active directly or through angelic guides or meditation, was God also communicating to us through dreams? I am referring to spiritual dreams. I would make every effort to find out. My guides wasted no time. I began to remember dreams the very night we agreed to work together. Sometimes I would have 2 or 3 very clear dreams the same night. Every year I filled an entire book with dreams and their interpretations. I would always try to interpret the dream first. If I was not successful or if I were completely stumped, I would ask for help. A perfect analysis and interpretation of every dream came quickly when my guides helped. There was no hesitation. They knew exactly every point in the dream that had significance. The majority of the dreams were spiritual. Occasionally, I was warned in a dream about things not so spiritual, such things as a flat tire or engine trouble, in which case what I dreamed happened to me exactly 2 weeks later. Every detail happened as I dreamed. The exact time in the evening, the freeway, the street where I had to get off because the engine was flashing red, smoke was pouring out of the hood, and the car was stalling. In both the dream and the reality 2 weeks later, I ended up at a gas station about 2 blocks past the exit. The car died there. My associate came and picked me up. The second time, I dreamed of a flat tire, the right front tire. So I went out and bought a new tire, the best tire they made. I wasn't going to get caught this time. However, after 2 weeks, I found that brand new tire flat when I went to my car that morning. I put on a spare and went back to the same tire company to check it out. The mechanic was baffled. He said there was absolutely nothing wrong with the tire. The message, in the final analysis, was not about the tire at all. My guides were simply reinforcing the idea that the future could be foretold and that dreams in particular may pertain to the past, present, or future. No harm was done. I simply learned a lesson. Occasionally, I was given information about certain future events. I never doubted my trustworthy guides, and they were never wrong. I was working with dreams very effectively, and they were a source of spiritual growth for me. About the same time, I was then introduced to what was called rescue work by my guides. It made a lot of sense. Helpers on the other side are ready to welcome those who have passed from this life to the next. It would be helpful to them if the person dying could be prepared in some way before their transition. For example, as a priest, I could talk to souls ready to leave their body, do a bit of counseling, and remove as much as possible the shock of finding themselves on the other side. This was all new to me, so I made arrangements with my guides to do this kind of work during the night. My plan was to use my sleep time productively. I could serve others even while I'm sleeping. The first night after we made an agreement, I was suddenly awakened with a horribly loud sound. It was an accident on the road. I was there seeing a man dying. He was lying in the seat of the car with his head tilted back. I was surprised to be there, and more surprised that he could see me. I was wearing my priest's garb. I asked if I could help him. He said he was not Catholic. I replied that it didn't matter. I continued, "Would you like me to pray with you?" Without hesitation, he said, "Yes, please." We prayed together. I asked him to tell God he was sorry for anything he had ever done to offend his conscience. When I was finished, I immediately found myself back in bed, wide awake. I was stunned. I had made my first rescue service to a total stranger about to make his transition. I went back to sleep, but not right away. It took me time to come down emotionally. No sooner had I gotten to sleep when, pow, another accident. This time I'm standing in front of a lady dying out on a highway. There were 2 cars involved with 2 fatal injuries. I ministered to both of them. One was Catholic, the other was not. It didn't matter to me in the slightest. I was happy to serve them in their last moments here on earth. When I finished, I was back in bed wide awake again. When morning came, I was exhausted. After all, I was not used to working through the night. For the next 3 weeks, I was awakened 1 or more times each night. I would go to sleep like everybody else, then, bam, I am out on the street offering spiritual help. Sometimes I found myself in the hospital administering a sacrament and or a prayer to someone about to die. I seemed to be especially drawn to someone who was praying for help. After the 3 weeks, I consulted my guides. They were not surprised. I admitted that I could not continue this overly active night ministry. We called it off by agreement. I said if I am healthy and strong enough when I retire, I would consider continuing rescue work. From that point on, I limited myself to the work at hand during the day. Page 169 is a picture of my uncle, probably taken around the time he published the book. Page 170 also has family pictures. On the top left is my grandmother and Father Jay's sister, Marie Hello, and to her right is her sister, my Aunt Jenny Latif. Below that is my great-grandparents, Jacob and Mary Samonie. Page 171 is a group picture of the relatives who were still living at the time the picture was taken, which includes 4 sisters and his 1 brother. Each person's name is listed below the picture. And to close out this chapter, page 172 is a picture of the painting that Father Jay did to depict the vision shared by the children in 1937 and mentioned earlier in the book. Chapter 30. Teaching Mind Development and Stress Control. In 1972, I received a call from a representative of the Assignment Board for Priests. He stated that they wanted me to accept the appointment as pastor of St. Michael's Church in Pontiac. I told him I was quite busy with several projects at St. Bernadette's and would like to stay on where I was. Then I received a call from the regional bishop requesting the same thing. I figured it was time to leave St. Bernadette Church, and finally I accepted the appointment. A curious thing happened at that time, unknown to me. A couple of Arabs from southeast Dearborn made an appointment with Cardinal Dearden. The cardinal was surprised. but he received a greater shock when a whole busload of Arabs came to the meeting arranged with him. The cardinal himself told me this. He asked them to explain the purpose of the meeting. They told him they wanted to keep Father Samonie at St. Bernadette's. He asked why. Since they were Muslims, they had their own imam, priest. They responded that they did indeed have an imam, but that Father J was their pastor. The cardinal heard from them about my struggles at the city council meetings, defending their rights and siding with them against the city in general. He related to me how impressed he was. Nevertheless, he emphasized that I was already reassigned. There was no turning back. He felt badly, but the decision had been made. Needless to say, I was surprised at the whole incident. Not long after my appointment to St. Michael's in Pontiac, Rita Hopkins encouraged me to take a course called the Silva Method of Mind Development and Stress Control. We had just completed a meditation with a few other people and were discussing various new programs on the market. She recommended the Silva Method to me as a very good program to help build self-image and an excellent introduction to metaphysics. I took her up on it. From the beginning, I noticed two things that made the Silva Method interesting to me. The first was that it was not based on conjecture, but that it was scientific. Every technique used in the course was validated by empirical evidence or scientific instruments. The second item that impressed me was that it was free of charge to clergymen. The founder, Jose Silva, was an outstanding active Catholic layman who attended Mass regularly. He welcomed clergy of all religions and their input concerning the program. The lecturer, Ken McCauley, had to be on his toes in class. I asked a lot of questions. Every new concept that was introduced was accompanied by at least one or two questions I had to ask. I challenged practically everything in the course. However, the explanations given by the lecturer were excellent. He was a gifted instructor and knew his material very well. I was impressed. I was also grateful to Mrs. Hopkins for putting me in contact with a program that was going to make a noticeable change in my life. While at St. Michael's, I was visited more than once by lecturer Ken McCauley. He said that with my background and knowledge, I would make a good lecturer of the Silva Method. I was honored, but I felt much too busy to spend an extra 40 hours teaching while continuing my daily responsibilities. The basic course took 4 days, or 2 full weekends at 10 hours each day. Mr. McCauley did not give up on me. I was finally convinced to take the lecture training program in Laredo, Texas. Interestingly enough, there were 2 other persons from the Detroit area that also signed up to be lecturers. Both were nuns. I couldn't quite figure it out, but we almost gave the impression that the Silva Method was a religious course, sponsored by the Catholic Church. Nothing could be further from the truth. Any appearance to that effect was purely coincidental. In fact, 99% of the lecturers were lay people, and, by far, the majority were a mix of religious persuasion or had no religious affiliation at all. After 2 weeks' training, we returned home and I began teaching under the supervision of Ken McCauley. I taught in-home from the start. One of my first classes in the Silva Method was to a group of teachers in the local public school system. I was a little apprehensive teaching a group of teachers. I would soon find out whether my personal belief that I could teach well was real or imagined. I finished the course and it was time for an honest reckoning and evaluation. The teachers were impressed with the lectures and said they were amazed at my teaching skills. I was surprised and greatly encouraged to continue as a lecturer in the Silva Method. I saw nothing I taught in conflict or offensive to my convictions, to the Catholic doctrine, or to any religious or moral standards as I understood them. The Silva Method was simply a course in self-improvement. I taught the course over 60 times in a period of about 16 years. Through the accomplishments of my teachings, research, and success in the field of mind development, I earned a doctorate in metaphysics, or mind sciences, called Psychorientology. Chapter 31. Wisdom from the East. Many people have had mystical and cosmic experiences. Some have written about them. Yet I never met or read of any experiences similar to mine. That is, until I met a genuine Buddhist monk from Sri Lanka. One night, as I just got to sleep, the phone rang. It was Ken McCauley. He apologized for calling so late, but he stated that he was well aware of my desire to meet a Buddhist monk. Well, now was my chance. The famous Eastern master Mahinda, who had been teaching and lecturing all over the world for the last 20 years, was giving a lecture at the very moment in Ken's SMC Center. He would be finished by midnight and agreed to spend some time with me afterwards. It was the only opportunity to visit Mahinda as he was leaving town in the morning. I was not going to pass up this opportunity. I dressed as quickly as possible and drove down to the center, which was located on Gratiot and 9 Mile, about 40 minutes away. I got there about 10 minutes before midnight. Mahinda was just finishing his talk. After a few last comments were made and everyone had left, it was almost exactly the midnight hour. The two of us sat and chatted. We talked about some general issues concerning the concept of God, the world, the purpose of life on this planet, and many other issues of common interest. When the appropriate moment arrived, I started speaking about my 40 nights of mystical, spiritual, and cosmic experiences. He listened attentively. Once or twice he interrupted to add a clarifying description to what I was saying. After the first time he made a comment, I thought to myself that he was very kind and surprisingly accurate. The second time he spoke with comments so specific that what he said could only be known by someone who had been there, someone who was speaking from experience and not guesswork. I became very excited, knowing that he knew. I was not alone. I cannot explain the thrilling and exalting feeling that ran through me as I related the whole experience to him. When I was finished, he made some startling comments. First, that he knew precisely where I was in the realm of spiritual growth. He explained how one's readiness and achievement prepared a person for a visitation appropriate to his or her level of awareness. The religion of the master or the teacher responding would depend on the religious convictions of the recipient. Mahinda pointed out to me that being a Christian, my encounter would naturally be with Christ in the aura of light. A devout Buddhist would most likely be visited by Buddha. He also did not express any element of surprise while hearing of my out-of-body experiences as well as the instructions I was being given. It was all part of the same package, so to speak. One item surprised the monk. He was amazed that I achieved that level of awareness without a teacher. He said that in India, a student generally had to follow a guru or teacher around for at least 10 years before they began to get genuine results. He added that being a Westerner, I was truly an exception to the rule, and pursuing the path I followed with undying passion was almost unique in the Western world. Then he made a statement that brought all thoughts within me to complete silence. He said he had traveled the world over and met many members of the clergy, most of whom were outstanding, but there was no doubt in his mind that I had achieved an awareness as high as any clergyman he had ever met. Another statement of surprise. He knew exactly what my next step was. I knew what his answer was going to be, but I asked anyway, "Will you share that next step with me?" As I presumed, he stated that I did not ask the proper question. My question was important because each of us has to find our own niche, our own path, our own place in the sun. We both knew that. He did share this much, however. He affirmed that if I were to continue on this same path, I would be given the next phase of enlightenment within the next 5 years. He would speak no more about it. He tossed the proverbial ball elegantly and with precision back into my lap. After all, it was my quest. This Buddhist monk represented the only person I had ever met on this planet who also experienced similar phenomena and who understood my dilemma as a priest living in the West. I was far more impressed that he understood than I was by his compliments. Believe me, I do not wish in any way to place myself above anyone else. As I said, we all have our own path to follow. Mine is not better, it is simply different. If you want to be impressed, I believe we are all humbled by the example in the Scriptures of the widow's mite. In the Gospel, according to Mark 12:14-44, it reads, "Taking a seat opposite the treasury, Jesus observed the crowd putting money into the collection box. Many of the wealthy put in sizable amounts, but one poor widow came and put in 2 small copper coins worth a few cents. He called his disciples over and told them, 'I want you to observe that this poor woman contributed more than all the others who donated to the treasury. They gave from their surplus wealth, but she gave from her want, all that she had to live on.' Jesus immortalized her generosity. He placed her far above most of the human race in the spirit of giving." A more modern scenario would be a young widow with several children. She may be far superior to us all in the pursuit of commitment, sacrifice, and yes, holiness, because of the passion in which she fulfills her purpose, to raise and educate her children to the best of her ability and with the limited income and resources available to her. I bow my head with profound respect to these women for such a perfect demonstration of responsibility and single-mindedness. We are all on a journey pursuing our goals. We are not in competition with each other. Each of us can do something the other cannot. No one can walk in your shoes. Everyone is contributing something unique to life. Each of us has a mission to accomplish in our lifetime. If there is work yet to be done, we are given the opportunity to accomplish it. I spoke of the time when I was spared from leaving the earth by means of a tornado. There were also other instances in which I escaped death quite miraculously. A few years before I was assigned to St. Michael's in Pontiac, I was driving to Chicago with a classmate of mine, Father Joe Brady. We drove his father's car, which at the time was better than ours. We were on the freeway about halfway to Chicago. It was winter time, but the roads were clear and we were driving at the proper freeway speed. Without warning, we suddenly drove over a patch of ice that caused the car to be completely out of control. I was behind the steering wheel at the time, and I made every effort to regain control without success. There was a huge ditch by the side of the road, and we were heading straight for it. Joe and I looked at each other. The meaning was clear. The situation was hopeless and did not allow for words, but my mind was saying, "I'll see you in the next life, my friend." Just before the tragic moment was about to take place and catapult us into the next life, I managed to pray the expression I'm accustomed to in the presence of danger: "Jesus, Mary, and Joseph." Certain death awaited us, but that's not the way it ended. As we approached the area of the treacherous ditch, we happened to hit a guardrail, a very small one at that, which was not visible at the time. We hit the guardrail with the full force of the speed and weight of the car. We then turned completely around, and the back of the car hit the same guardrail equally hard. That caused us to spin and threw us back on the road. We were now in the correct position and direction to continue driving. I touched my face and chest to see if I was still alive, in the flesh. We both gestured with a sigh of gratitude. Looking at the car from the outside, both the front and back of the car were damaged heavily. The bumpers absorbed the full impact, and the car, incredibly, was still drivable. We continued on to Chicago, took the car to the garage, and had it fixed while we spent the weekend in the Windy City as planned. For a few brief moments we thought we would be entering the kingdom of spirit. Instead, we arrived at the Loop in Chicago. Neither of us was injured in any way except perhaps financially, getting the car repaired. We knew then that we had more work to do. Our time had not yet come. Not long after that incident, I was driving Rachel Hessen, a close friend of the family, to the airport. We were on the freeway a few miles short of the airport. The traffic suddenly came to a complete stop. We were the last in a long line of cars. I happened to look in the rear view mirror, and I saw a car speeding toward us. It was not slowing down. I screamed, "Ray, we're about to get hit. Brace yourself." We anticipated the worst, and we got it. The car ramming us had to be doing freeway speed. It jolted us very hard, and we went smashing into the car in front of us. Then the same car that made the first strike hit us again. this time with full impact. My beautiful new car looked like an accordion. I checked body parts one at a time. Legs, okay. Arms, okay. Neck, no whiplash. Ray, that's the way she spells it. Are you all right? I think so, she said. Wait a minute. I think my instep is fractured. She was wearing heels. That was the only injury. When we both got out of the car, squashed to almost half its normal length, people looked at us with amazement. We were amazed too. The man who hit us and started a chain of accidents was quite intoxicated. He was unhurt, of course, and quite oblivious to the lives he almost sent into the world of spirit. Thinking of God's divine providence once again, thank you, repeatedly poured out of my mouth. Once again I received an affirmation that we only leave this world when our mission is complete, and not before then, regardless of what the circumstances look like. Thank you for listening, and please join us every Sunday at 3 o'clock for our watch party as we premiere the next chapters of Father Jay's book.